Hello and welcome to Further Inside Chor Leoni. My name is Erick Light, and I am the artistic director of Chor Leoni. And I am joined by two esteemed members of, I think, probably my favorite vocal ensemble of all time, Chanticleer. We have Logan Shields and Gerrod Pagenkopf joining us today. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
It's really great to, first of all, just see another person. It's awesome, and it's lovely that you agreed to be on the show. It's really nice right now that you can actually just like call up artists and pretty much know they're free. So you got that for us.
Right? Yeah, there you are.
Oh, Joe.
It's fantastic. Could you just briefly just take a moment and introduce yourselves and just give us a little bit about your musical background?
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Gerrod. I am originally from Northeast Wisconsin. I've been in Chanticleer for 5 years. This is my 5th season. And I'm also the assistant music director of Chanticleer. I have a bachelor's in music education from the University of Wisconsin at Madison, so go Badgers. And I have a master's degree in vocal performance from the University of Houston, so go Cougs as well. Hello, my blood is red, Bucky Badger red. But I have been singing since I was in elementary school. I always knew I wanted to be a musician, a singer. I did a stint in Boston for a while, trying to be a freelance early musician because I thought that's where you needed to do it. And one day Chanticleer called and said they had a last-minute opening, and I jumped at the opportunity and ran away and joined the circus. So that's how.
That's probably a pretty apt description of that. Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. And Logan.
Yeah. So I grew up in southwestern Michigan, a little town called Three Rivers. Spent a lot of time in Grand Rapids, Michigan, singing. I studied at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo and Grand Valley State University just outside of Grand Rapids, actually as a tenor. And a little.
We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, right. And so I did most of my work in the tenor voice, primarily interested in the early music, of course. Most of my professional singing before this, I did a little small ensemble based in Ann Arbor, I think now Detroit, called Audivi, under Noah Horn, and just singing for the Episcopal Church, St. Mark's Episcopal, downtown Grand Rapids. Was working actually in craft beer when I auditioned for Chanticleer, and got the call. And as Gerrod said, this is my 4th season singing soprano with Chanticleer. So
it's fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining us. I think it was great when I found out it was going to be the two of you on the show, and I just saw a real opportunity here to really talk about voice parts and the journey that singers go on to find where they end up, I guess to say. That journey, I think, exists for every singer, whether it's an amateur singer, professional, and for men, we go through a voice change and what that all means. And I think the two of you, could offer all of us a real chance to learn a bit and get a bit of a fresh perspective. So I want to start first off. Let's talk about nomenclatures here. You both sing soprano. Is that in Chanticleer? You both sing soprano, or that's going to be my assumptive question, and you can now correct me.
Logan?
So for kind of all intents and purposes, generally speaking, that's kind of just the easiest way to, communicate what we're doing, what kind of tessitura we're handling versus maybe what you typically associate with the countertenor singing. But I've kind of dabbled in expanding that. Of course, we all are countertenors. Nobody is using a full modal vocal function to sing those high notes. So we're all falsettists. But I've gone to describe kind of what Gerrod and I have to do as like sopranist singing, which I believe is an English term. So it's, the extensions there for the most part. There's a lot of the same high notes, but managing tessitura, I think is kind of the big difference between, like, when I were to say, oh, meet my friend Claire, the soprano, and, you know, meet Gerrod, the soprano. It's the approach is very different.
Absolutely. Gerrod, anything to add into that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think Logan nailed it. I think that, you know, it's a relative term for us. We are not male sopranos. Those men do exist, and they sing mostly in opera right now, if they do sing. But we sing the soprano part. So yes, we are the highest countertenors in Chanticleer, but we're not singing. Well, Logan is singing as high as some of our female friends, but most of our female friends can still outsing us as far as range goes. But we are, I mean, I don't think we're fooling anybody into telling anybody that we are, you know, sopranos that can sing
Sure.
high C's and all that coloratura nonsense. But in the world of countertenors, we are on the higher end, I suppose you would say.
Got it. And so if you're appearing, either of you are appearing with the symphony orchestra singing a solo, it goes then, as in your bio, it says Logan Shields what next to that in that context?
Countertenor.
Countertenor.
Got it. Okay. I think there are so many misnomers going around that I thought, well, I've got two horses here. I might as well get it from your mouths. Yeah. So what is interesting to me then just to bring this back in terms of Chanticleer, you are taking the soprano parts. I think many of our, especially younger viewers, may think that if I'm singing the soprano part, I am a soprano, or if I'm singing the alto part, I am an alto. Can you offer a little bit of illumination with the sorts of parts that you sing versus what you actually are, and what that differentiation should be? Does that question make sense to you?
Oh yeah, very much. I'm a strong believer in the idea that you can't force the instrument to always serve necessarily the range of a piece, or the vocal part, or the demands. You really should find the most accessible and beautiful singing in your voice, right? So it's easy to get hung up. Oh, I'm always on soprano, so I'm a soprano, right. I have to sing tenor. But I think people need to get comfortable with this kind of choral chameleon type thing that is, maybe your tenor voice is great for a spiritual, but when it's time to sing some, Victoria, it's just too much color and you're going to sing baritone, baby. It's right. You don't wet a title, Yeah.
And I would, go ahead. Yeah, Gerrod.
Oh, I was going to say, even in Chanticleer, we'll jump around a lot because most of us, I mean, with the exception of maybe Cortez and Logan, whose voices are a little bit higher, most of us are really altos in the group. I was singing alto too before I joined Chanticleer, low alto. But when I sing soprano, it's the upper limit of my range, and so anybody to sit up there all the time is very taxing. So we will switch around a lot of the time. So I think a couple years ago, in Chanticleer, instead of differentiating the sopranos and altos in our programs, it just says countertenors now, because all six of us, and even we're sometimes bringing Brian up from the tenor part to cover some alto parts as needed. Because we have so many, like Logan says, vocal chameleons in our ensemble that can sing more than one part. But yeah.
And I think this kind of leads me into the next bit of questions that I want to get into. I'd love to know a little bit more about your journey to becoming countertenors. As I was saying before, I think every singer is going to, especially if you sing as a boy, you are going to have one voice, and then the voice is going to go through its change, and something else develops there. And I think all of us then have to go through a process of rediscovery and figuring that out, and that takes some time. Would one of you be willing to share a little bit of your journey of singing? Did you sing as a child and then go through the voice change, move to baritone tenor, and then discover countertenor, or however that worked for you?
Yeah, for me, I sang as a kid. I joined the grade school chorus when I was in the fifth grade. So I've been singing since I was 10 years old, so only 15 years now. But I've always been a singer, and even when my voice changed, I still wanted to sing with the altos and the sopranos. And so I also grew up in a really small community in Northeast Wisconsin. I didn't take voice lessons when I was in high school. And so I was singing the only way I knew how, which was to flip up to those high notes. I just did it, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I think I was inadvertently training myself to be a countertenor because I was always flipping into my falsetto, my head voice, to sing those high notes. So when it was time to go off to college as an 18-year-old, I auditioned as a tenor, but I was really singing in falsetto as a tenor. And so I got to studying with a serious voice teacher, or I got to seriously studying with a voice teacher, and I didn't sound like any of the other tenors of recordings I was listening to, no other tenors in my studio. And around that time, the turn of the century, there was a famous countertenor who had put out an album of Handel arias, and I picked it up and listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I do. I can do this. And so I asked my teacher about it, and she gave me a Handel aria to prepare over the summer. And when I came back at the end of summer term, I sang it for her, and she said, yes, this is your voice. And so ever since then, as a 21-year-old, I have been singing countertenor because that's, like I said, I think I inadvertently trained myself to do that because I never learned tenor technique. I didn't know that you were supposed to stay in your chest voice, at middle C. And so, and then when I made the transition over to countertenor, all of the frustrations I was having as a singer just kind of melted away. And it was like, oh, this is what I've been doing, and this is so much easier now. And so I've been on that path ever since then. And it wasn't until I joined Chanticleer a couple of years ago that I had to start singing in my tenor voice again, which is scary because I still don't really know what I'm doing down there. But
yeah, it's like punk rock tenor. You just sort of like, just like play.
Yeah, he makes a handsome sound.
Well, thank you, Logan.
Logan,
do you have anything in your journey that would be contrasting or different than
actually, most definitely. So I as a child, obviously singer, big into singing, pushed by the family, go sing for grandpa and grandma and aunt and cousins. And so I kind of got into the performance aspect at a young age, but I always was I was exposed to kind of hair metal bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest at a young age. And so the idea of a male singing falsetto high notes was cool to me.
Totally, yes.
And that was some of my first kind of practice at using the falsetto, even before my voice had broken, was like doing some of those squeals and those high notes. And so the voice broke, and I was kind of just going to be, I think, a punk rocker, playing guitar and singing songs to woo people, and it ended up having a bunch of friends push me, hey, come on, you have a great voice, think you have something, come audition for choir, get in a choir, toss in the advanced choir, like, oh, okay, maybe this is real. And I started a journey with tenor singing, kind of like a full sound, maybe even more dramatic tenor singing. So all through college, I was studying tenor and having a heck of a time with it because the extension's there, but it's, scary, and there's so much stress. Right. And I always knew, like, I could fall back on falsetto, like Gerrod had mentioned, in tenor parts, especially in chorus. Like, there were times that they wouldn't even know the, mezzo piano A was just completely falsetto, no head, no anything. And I started pushing voice teachers to try and switch Bach, and they weren't as interested in letting go of a 6'4" tenor interested in opera at that, they were less interested in trying to allow me to make that shift.
It's like a football team, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, both institutions, at both schools I studied, they were both times were like, nah, sing tenor. You're a great tenor. And it wasn't until I left school, it was actually working as a manager at a craft brewery. Went and did a couple of gigs as a countertenor. My first countertenor gigs as an alto. And I was like, wow, this is just so much more free, so much less stress. I'm thinking about artistic phrasing. I'm thinking about all of these, thinking about messa di voce in a way I haven't. And so it kind of just clicked for me that maybe that was my innate kind of place for singing. And auditioned for Chanticleer as an alto, actually, and ended up getting hired as the tippy top. So it all works.
Now, what's interesting to me is both of you seem like you had very different experiences with teachers, and I think I mean I could go on forever about where we're at in terms of voice teaching and what the goal is of what we're trying to develop in private voice teaching. I think opera probably gets the most push for what's going on there, but if you don't fit into those niches, which neither of you seem like you did, at least the first box you got put into. Would you have any recommendations for people that are feeling like they don't quite are fitting into to where they're being told to sing, either in choir or in their private voice studio?
That's a tough line to navigate because there's a lot of ego involved. With voice people, ourselves included, but that's a tough thing, and we meet a lot of guys on the road that come up to it and ask that very same question. Like, I know I'm a countertenor, but they won't let me sing it, and it's hard. It's sometimes you just have to wait until you can be in a place and find somebody that will let you take that journey. I was very lucky that I worked with a teacher who allowed me to do that. Logan, not as much. And so he just had to kind of bide his time. It's tough. It's very tough. And oftentimes, especially in an academic situation, you have to jump through hoops and hurdles to get the degrees. So I don't know. I guess I don't know the answer to that question. I do what you have to do, but then also stay true to yourself and do what you love, I guess. It's a tough, like I said, it's a tough line to navigate. Logan?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, and especially like regarding maybe not a complete Fach change, from baritone to countertenor or something, but if you're especially struggling kind of with what you've been assigned, a tenor struggling with tenor arias or a chanson, things like that. Like, I always tell people, pitch moves. So I always encourage people, is the high key too high? You could take it down a whole step. I'm sure you could find the score. If you can't, transcribe it. I mean, it'd be, I think we're so wedded to this was written in this key and it must be sung in tono. And it must, and it's like, if you do, you do the research on A and where it's been over the years, it's just always serve the voice.
Which tone am I in? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So just serve the voice. Find the beautiful part. Of course, you need to stretch things and try to kind of get out of your comfort zone, but don't do anything that just completely wrecks you mentally or hurts you physically.
Yeah.
I just, I grew up singing, of course, and I grew up also as a string player, and it's like everyone knows what the cello is and what the cello is supposed to become, but we don't really know what this is going to become until maybe we're 25, 26, that you start to figure out where that is, and you have to learn so much and all the rest of it. A lot of times I've been trying to let people know that, choir can be a very safe place to try some other stuff out. As you were saying, like, you can sneak over to the altos and who's going to know about it? And you can try those things on, and choir can be such a safe place to try those things out. And even in a small ensemble like Chanticleer, you're doing that all the time because you guys are singing TTBB repertoire here and there, as well as 12-part music. I'm actually curious as to how your nomenclatures work. I believe you have chairs, right? You are arranged in chairs, chair one, chair two, etc. Could you explain that process and then how that relates to, like, here's a piece of 4-part TTBB music, or here's a 12-part SSAAA TTTTTB piece of me. I don't think that was 12. But can you? Yeah, I didn't count. But can you explain what that process is within Chanticleer, and then maybe how you both bop around within that?
Yeah, I think that they devised the chair system so that chair one was supposed to be your highest soprano all the time, sings top part. Chair three soprano was supposed to be the soprano component of the split SSA thing. Chair 7 is supposed to be your high soloistic tenor with the upper extensions, and we still have a lot of guys who sit in those, who fit the description of those chairs. I think that the point was so that if our chair 7 was leaving, we would know what we were asking for of the next chair 7.
What you're looking for in that next singer.
Exactly.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Right. I will say we've gotten a little bit away from that in the last couple of seasons, because finding a chair 1 soprano and a chair 12 bass, the Erick Alatorre bass is a hard shoe to fill. And we've had some really spectacular high sopranos in the past: Chris Fritchie, Randall Wong, some of these other big names. But those men are hard to find. So I sit in chair 1, but I am by no means a top tier soprano in that regard. We have a guy sitting in chair 12, Andy Berry, who is a very capable bass with a solid low C, but I mean, he's not Erick Alatorre. I mean, so the chair system has its flaws. So we often will get a piece of 12 part, music, and right now it has to be beat out to who can sing the range. And so oftentimes Logan will get dumped on a soprano 1 part. Cortez will often have to jump up, who sits chair 4, will often have to jump up and sing soprano 2. I'll usually dip down to the soprano 3 line. And as far as TTBB music goes, it's a crapshoot. Basically anybody, for the countertenors anyway, you just sing whatever you can sing. And then we let the tenors and basses do all the heavy lifting.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I am a proud second tenor. Okay.
Yes, he is. Logan loves to be down there.
I love T2. Give me T2 all the time.
Do you? Who does those assignments then?
Generally, our music director, William Fred Scott, will make his initial assignments, but sometimes we'll come back to him and say, this doesn't work. This part is too low for me, or this part is too high. And then ideally we collectively come to a consensus about who will sing what part. It's difficult right now because, we're in shelter at home and we're supposed to be putting up some concerts in June. And so we have all this music we're supposed to be learning. And it does sometimes happen where you don't know which part you're supposed to be preparing because the assignments haven't been made. Or we have a new piece that we're supposed to be premiering by Stephen Sametz, which is one of these 3 sopranos, 3 altos, and it's, I look at the soprano 1 part and I'm like, well, I could sing most of that, but they're a little, so it does get a little dicey sometimes, but we do our best to make it work. I mean, we always make it work, but we do our best. We're pretty self-sufficient in that regard. You're on the road a lot, and these are long, demanding programs. I've gone to many Chanticleer concerts over my lifetime, and being on the road can be the hardest thing ever. Are there considerations where, like, okay, I'll take the high road on this one, and then I'm going to move down here? That there's an arc happening within the course of a given program. Logan.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Not only piece to piece. Not even sometimes we even kind of micro assigned
inside.
Where you're having to, a baritone is helping this low tenor part, but then it finally turns into a real tenor part, and all of a sudden you need somewhere else to go. So that's happening piece to piece. But yeah, Fred has been good about trying to map out throughout the whole program. Okay, this guy's been really given a lot of first soprano. Let's give him some alto, or maybe some second soprano, and that helps a whole lot because it's doable what Gerrod and I do, and Cortez, but it's taxing. It's very taxing. Yeah. So you have to be very thoughtful, especially when you might be on stage for 2 hours. So
yep,
absolutely.
And Logan and I, in our 4 years of working together, have really we have dialogues frequently about, hey, you cover that and I'll to cover this while you take a little bit of a break. And so we really, between the two of us, often do a lot of dovetailing. He gives more here where he can, and I give more in the lower part to give him a little bit of a break. But yeah, those internal conversations are crucial for sustainability of doing a 2-hour show 4 to 5 nights a week. you know.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're going to need to leave it there. I want to thank you. We're going to play as a great example of all the ranges that get sung. This fantastic Pilgrim medley from Joe Jennings, who just is one of the great arrangers of all time. But thank you so much for offering this perspective of how much creativity and flexibility goes into doing what we do, even at the top levels. And I think it's a really great message to have for singers and conductors alike. So thank you, guys.
Our pleasure.
there is plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty